Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. We're here with the Dwarves versus the Tomb Kings. I'm actually going to be playing as the Scaly Boys, and Reptile King is playing as the Dwarves. Sorry if my voice seems a little bit out, guys. I'm feeling a bit under the weather, but hopefully we can get through this cast alright. Let's go ahead and take a look at the builds. For my build, I've got 4 Skeleton Horseman Archers up front. We've got some carrion here, 2 Tomb Scorpions hidden in the woods over here in Vanguard, Ark in the Black leading the way, a bunch of spooky skeleton spears backed up by Ushabti, 5 spears and 4 Ushabti. That's it for my build. For the Dwarves, they've got a bolt thrower crew which is currently getting lit up by the archers, some slayers here, 2 groups of regular slayers. We've also got some dwarf warriors and longbeards up front, a peak gate guard, miners, and a Thane, with Grombrindal leading the way, as we saw in the beginning. So decided to open with Grombrindal just because his angry face. I just love it. But anyway, you can see here the Skeleton Horseman Archers doing exactly what I need them to, which is to fire at artillery crews. Because they have very long range for skirmish cav, pretty much the longest range of any skirmish cav, I believe, they can get really good work done against Dawi artillery crews. Of course, Dawi artillery crews do have very low armor comparative to the rest of the rosters, so non-AP missiles like this can be very cost effective here. Bolt thrower, only 550 points, not the worst thing to lose out on at the start there. You can see I had to pull back because Reptile King moved up to zone me out. We're going to drop down the carrion now as my front line advances here. Tomb Scorpion swooping out from the woods, and Mr. Spooky Man himself up on his chariot, floating through the air here, getting ready to engage. The archers are going to switch on to slayers here. You can see the Iron Drakes opening up in the front. They are going to be going after the Ushabti here. Unfortunately, the Iron Drakes don't have the best AP values. An overcast, what is this, purple sun here, not doing the most damage in the world. Unfortunately, it did get a bit of a miss there. But you can see Arcan is going to be summoning up some skeleton warriors here, using that Liber Mortis as well, where both of those Tomb Scorpions are fighting. Archers providing some supporting fire into those slayers. Unfortunately, the Iron Drakes are getting a little bit caught up here, but there's still plenty of sturdy dwarf units fighting. You can see over on the far side, Longbeards moving in as these dwarf warriors are getting cut up pretty bad. But the Peak Gate Guard still unengaged here. Unfortunately, the Bolt Thrower crew did get finished off by those carrion there, but the miners able to mostly finish off the carrion as well, so definitely a bit of give and take. Again, only 550 points means that Bolt Thrower is a relatively cheap artillery piece in total, and if you do lose it, it's not the worst. That being said, the pieces themselves will also act as blockers, so like if Reptile King was to pull back here, for example, these things would block up the charges of like the Ushabti and the chariots and so on. But anyway, moving back into the main fight here, you can see the swarm is definitely going down sort of on the flanks here. In the center though, the Ushabti, where the Ushabti are not, the fight's definitely going to go in the dwarves' favor here. We get a nice close-up look. You can see the Iron Drakes pouring in some beautiful fire from the flanks there. Definitely some really good stuff. We're using Spirit Leech on the Iron Drakes because they have a relatively low model count. The damage scaling of Spirit Leech will actually work quite well there, so it's a nice little use of magic for Arcan here. Likewise, you can use Spirit Leech on the artillery pieces as well, and it will also do some pretty good damage there also. I said also twice, but anyway, you can see more skeleton summons here. Going to be bailing out Arcan and just providing some more bodies for these Ushabti as they try and cut through units out on this flank here. Maybe. I thought I was going to summon some skeletons. Maybe not. Looks like it might have got cancelled out there. But anyway, out on this flank here, Grombrindal trying to hold things up. The support is getting worn down. These Dwarf Warriors and Longbeards, obviously able to cut through the skeletons, but the Ushabti definitely racking up kills very, very quickly here. The Carrion pretty much serve their purpose, so they're just going to be used to bog down and soak up some hits for these Scorpions here. Scorpions also getting some really nice work done as well, of course. But Dwarves definitely very resilient. These Peak Gate Guard especially. Grombrindal has no fear buff, is currently active, so all these units map-wide are currently unbreakable, so, the fear and terror not really going to be too effective here, and you can see those Ushabti taking a ton of damage from those Peak Gate Guard. They have legit weapon strength, very, very strong combat stats as well in terms of their attack and defense, so obviously we're going to drop a nice little Purple Sun on them. They're going to try and get out of the way, but that Purple Sun does still make pretty good contact, do a nice little burst of damage there, and help swing that fight back around. You can see Arcan charge into those Warriors Dragon Fire Pass, then pulling away, obviously not wanting to stay and take that fire damage. And I see what Reptile King was going for here with the Iron Drakes, but they really just don't have the AP values to take down the constructs. We'll talk more about that in the end screen there, but you can see the skeleton support is just about gone, and that does leave these Ushabti a little bit vulnerable to take a lot of hits. They are low on HP, but still very critically. 9 models remaining here, 7 models remaining here, even though they have more HP. So just the fact that there's still so many unit models fighting for the Ushabti despite their low HP is very important in this late game situation. Both the Scorpions as well, despite the fact they've taken some damage, just haven't been able to be focused down. Balance power still very even though, as these Peak Gateguard and Grombrindle still relatively healthy. Grombrindle still has some support fighting here. These Dwarf Warriors still trying to fight, and Grombrindle winning decisively obviously against these tiny little skelly boys. Not really too much of a surprise there. Unfortunately, Grombrindle, he has been able to do some good damage to Ushabti. I believe he just about finished off both these units here, did the majority of the damage there, but again, hasn't been able to finish off any individual units. Both of them low HP, but still fighting, of course. Same story over on this flank. This one, only the one Ushabti still fighting, but the Peak Gateguard at this point, very, very low. Warriors of Dragonfire pass as well. A lot of the Skeleton Horseman Archers are going to start to run out of ammunition, so we'll push them into melee and start to get some rear charge penalties, see if we can't proc some terror routes here. We'll see. In the back line, Ark and the Black taking down the Iron Drakes in melee, and a lot of the Dwarf forces starting to rout off at this point. So just the grind, well, interestingly enough, favoring the Tomb Kings this time, and Grombrindle without support is finally going to get surrounded by Ushabti, and, you know, if he can get a kind of a 1v1 versus some of these Ushabti, he will absolutely just trash them. But when they get a full surround like this, and they're just continuously attacking him, he gets staggered, he loses his attack order, he doesn't get his melee defense from hits to the back. He's going to start to take a lot of damage here, and that will seriously affect the balance of power for the rest of the Dwarf units fighting. Of course, you can see the Dwarf situation looking pretty desperate at this point. Just the one unit of Longbeards mostly still healthy here, and the Thane starting to face a similar situation to Grombrindle as a lot of the support starts to give out here. Just getting smashed by the Tomb Scorpion tail there. Pretty uncomfortable situation overall, of course. You can see the balance power starting to slowly tilt more and more as the Dwarf leadership gets ground away here. So, well played to Reptile King. Pretty close game at the end of the day. I think, obviously, you know, him and I, as these were practice games, obviously, disclaimer, Reptile King is known for playing Lizard Men, if you couldn't tell from the name. So this was a bit of an experimental Dwarf build, but we'll kind of talk through what worked and what didn't together. And, I mean, obviously, Reptile King and I already talked about this just between the two of us, but figured it would be an interesting discussion for the rest of everyone else. Reptile King did say that he had meant to bring a Runesmith instead of the Thane, which I do think would be a pretty good option. Honestly, the Thane wasn't bad here, though. He does have some good utility and just can kind of help sustain leadership and so on. Decent melee combatant, will help sort of saturate against some monsters and stuff. But anyway, at the end of the day, Ushabti just proved to be a little bit too much along with the Tomb Scorpions. And yeah, Ark and the Black obviously with the summons, getting quite a bit of kills as well on his chariot. Lots of XP chevrons to go around for the Ushabti and lots of kills as well. 69 kills, 64 for the two Tomb Scorpions. As for the Dwarves here, Gromby himself racking up 46, Thane with 43. The Longbeards did quite well, as did some of the, like the Dwarf Warriors, the Warriors Dragonfire pass here, this other unit of Dwarf Warriors, obviously chopping through a lot of skeletons. Unfortunately, just the lack of AP anti-large here, and that kind of comes back to the Iron Drakes. As I was saying, the Flaming Iron Drakes, like I get taking them against the Tomb Kings, you know, their lords are weak to fire damage, right? So I kind of get the thinking. Unfortunately, the Flaming Iron Drakes have pretty poor AP values. That being said, the Trollhammer Torpedoes, on the other hand, are a very good pick in this particular matchup. The fact that they have massive anti-large AP and explosion damage means that they will do a ton of damage to Tomb King's constructs. Alternately, you could also take Brimstone Guns. Brimstone Guns recently had a missile damage buff in the last patch, so they are a little bit more effective, and they also do, again, fire damage. So they will do very well against constructs because of that AP. They'll do very well against Tomb King's leadership because of that fire damage, and again, most Tomb King's leadership tends to be relatively well armored as well, so that that armor piercing comes into effect. If we go over to Tomb Kings here, all their leadership units do have relatively high armor, especially if they're coming on constructs outside of Kotep, but of course Kotep is the only one not flammable, so the flaming damage does not apply. But yeah, gyrocopters with brimstone guns and or trollhammer torpedoes rather than the Iron Drakes, and also, you know, the bolt thrower can be a decent pick, might be a decent pick in this matchup if you were to take 2 or 3, but I think, honestly, because you can secure the air relatively well against things like Carrion, just with your regular ranged units, honestly, the Brimstone guns seem like a pretty appealing option to me, maybe bringing 2 or 3 units. You can bait the Carrion into a missile trap and take them out quickly. You basically have free reign in the air. Missile Shabti aren't a super common pick in this matchup, and you can generally take them out relatively well. And then you have the Brimstone guns to help you clear out chaff with the bombs, and then obviously go after constructs with the missiles. Alternately, you can use the Trollhammer torpedoes. And just one quick note about deployment as well. I just want to make one note about Reptile King's deployment there. Again, he's not a typical dwarf player, so this is a common mistake for people who are relatively new to playing the dwarves, and also applies to some other factions as well, such as the Empire, Skaven, some other missile factions, anyone that has like direct line of fire type missiles. I always like to put like handgunners, you know, thunderers, other direct line of fire type units in a relatively thick formation, more square type formation. This does make them more vulnerable to certain types of missiles, you know, things like fireball, chariot charge as well, can in theory do more damage when they're deployed like this, but more importantly, when they're deployed like this, they turn more quickly and they'll be able to fire more. In addition, they have a smaller footprint, so they get compromised less easily. So just kind of as an example here, we'll line up these Iron Drakes in kind of dense formations and just throw a little bit of a demonstration here. Let's get these gyros out of the way so that they don't interrupt this test too much. But just kind of as an example here, so if we tell these Iron Drakes to fire, let's say, at this unit, notice how quickly they change direction here. You see how quickly they change direction? They get set very quickly and they begin firing very, very quickly. I have heard people complain about Iron Drakes not being able to, like having a hard time getting online to fire, and my biggest advice is to deploy them in a very small formation like this. Of course, for things like Thunderers, it also is very applicable, but like just for example, if we turn to fire here, it looks like they actually have to move, but you can see how quickly the formation turns when they're in a nice little square formation like this. So just a little tip for those of you guys who are going to be playing dwarves, definitely do recommend you know, deploying your missile units. Not so much important for the Rangers, for the crossbow type missile units, although it is still relatively helpful to have them deployed in that blocky type formation. Just helps them turn a little bit faster once again. But just to finish things out here, let's get a nice cinematic, whoops, if we can drop the bombs here. Oh yeah, one more time. Beautiful. Just bomb out some skeletons for the people, just to remind everyone how effective those gyro bombers are. So yeah, just a little bit of advice for you budding dwarf players. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this replay. If you do like the sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video you'll be notified. Thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you next time.